Hey guys, so at a time when most car manufacturers are talking about phasing out the development of any new ICE, which is the internal combustion engine, as the EV revolution continues, here's a bit of quite surprising news. Renault and Chinese company Geely, with possible investment from Saudi Aramco, are setting up a new company to develop and build petrol, diesel and hybrid engines. What's going on? And what could this mean for the future of the motor industry and indeed motoring? Well, I'll tell you everything in this video.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
Right then, so yes, surprising news indeed that Renault and Geely have announced this new venture, joint venture in fact. But in my last auto news update on this channel, the video is live, go and check it out, I'll put a link above, below, whatever. We looked actually at the progress of the car industry in China. And what's becoming clear is that China will soon dominate the car sector. And this is partly due to the fact that them not being a traditional car manufacturing country, they weren't, bogged down with a lumbering industry that would be very hard to take that industry and change its direction. And this is the problem that legacy car manufacturers are having, is to pivot away from ICE to EVs. And for China, it was a clean slate option. They went, okay, let's just go with EVs. And that's what they've done. And they were then able to fully focus on obviously developing and building EVs, but also on the infrastructure required, and also the infrastructure required and the facilities required to manufacture what goes into an EV, which of course is the batteries, and that's a crucial part of the entire formula. So in fact, it does look likely that China will become the world's biggest car maker before long. Geely, for example, is one of China's biggest car companies. And in fact, if you haven't heard of them before, let me just tell you that they own Volvo, and therefore also Polestar, which is an offshoot of Volvo. And they also own the London Electric Vehicle Company. So that's the company that makes those new taxis, the new hybrid taxis, the new ones that you see around town. And they also own one of the most legendary and iconic British sports car making companies, that's Lotus, still based up in Hethel in Norfolk, but actually owned by Geely. And don't forget, when it comes to electric cars, Polestar is virtually an entirely EV brand. Volvo is increasingly making electric cars and very much pursuing that switch over. Lotus again is basically switching entirely to EVs. They've announced the Electra SUV, and of course the Avaya hypercar some time ago, and the Emira, its current sports car, which replaced all its previous sports cars, is basically their last petrol engined car, is what they've already said. So, and then yet we have Geely here. So despite the fact that, as I've just said, Geely has its fingers in so many different pies, if you like, that are focusing on EVs, but Geely has made this plan with Renault. They've signed a joint venture, and this is to develop petrol, diesel and hybrid cars with a focus on creating engines that are highly efficient but with very low emissions. This is the plan behind this. And once they've done this, of course, the plan would be to supply those engines obviously to Renault and to Geely, and also to Volvo, of course, but also to the likes of Nissan, Mitsubishi, Proton, and pretty much anyone else that wants to buy them. They'll be investing $8 billion in this, 7.71 billion to be exact, and that will go into 17 engine plants, 5 research and development hubs, and they'll hire 19,000 employees, and they'll have operational centers in Spain and in China, and this is across 3 continents, of course. But get this, the headquarters for this new company will be right here in the UK. Extraordinary, right? It's a lot of money though. But then you have Saudi Aramco, which is one of the world's biggest oil and gas companies, and they're looking to take a 20% stake in this new company. Frankly, that sort of money is petty cash for them, isn't it? It makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because essentially an oil company wanting to get involved in this, because if you were going to be cynical, and in fact it's not even cynical, it's actually quite logical if you think about it, it's not that much of a surprise that if the ICE cars are completely taken over by EVs, and companies such as Saudi Aramco make a lot of money on selling petrol and oil to drivers that own ICE cars, they're obviously going to want to try and protect some of that income, right? So in that sense, it does make financial sense for them, I suppose, to be pursuing this agenda with the likes of Renault and Geely. However, to be fair, big oil companies have been working with car companies on sustainable fuels and hydrogen technology for some time now, and they are trying to reduce their own carbon emissions. Although this could be the first time that one of these companies is actually directly invested in a car company or an engine building company, so it is a little bit of a radical step, if you like. So what does this all mean? What does this all tell us about the future of the car industry and of motoring? Well, in some ways it's fairly obvious, and it's quite interesting that the placing of the headquarters for this company that is focused on building petrol diesel engines is going to be here in the UK, where in 6 to 7 years time they are going to be banning the sale of new ICE vehicles entirely. Well, at least that's what they're supposed to be doing. If you watch my previous video, as I mentioned, you'll see that there is already some doubt about the take-up of electric cars and whether they're sufficient to actually sustain A, the industry, and B, the requirements of the motoring community, if you like. And this is global, not just in the UK. You know, so what could this mean for the car industry when you add in the fact that also in Europe, again, when you talk about deadlines for ICE sales being stopped, this is new ICE, of course, new petrol diesel cars. In Europe, the deadline was 2035, and that's also now unlikely to happen because Germany and Italy have put a giant spanner in the works. So it looks like we're going to have petrol and diesel cars for some time to come, certainly in Europe, and I think the deadline in the UK is also looking a little bit shaky. So I think this whole thing is a realization that this forced rather than the natural transition to alternative fuel motoring, i.e. EVs, you know, and I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of a natural transition to something that most people deem is right for them, that works for them, that is economically viable for them. If that's all the factors that fit into place and everybody goes, okay, EVs, they are the right car, they make perfect sense, hey ho, all good, move to EVs. But the idea of force feeding EVs to people that are simply not ready for them, or an infrastructure that is not ready for them, is surely a recipe for disaster. In this instance, if you look at what's happening, what I've said now, what I said in my previous video, it does look like that it could decimate and destroy the car industry as it exists today. In fact, many of the people that were commenting on my previous video have said that, you know, this is the end for legacy car makers, and that would be a sad day. But you know what? They're not necessarily wrong. So this situation with Renault and Geely, is this a sign that things are actually flipping around, that there's a fight back beginning, very slowly, but perhaps beginning? Could it be that the car industry is waking up to the fact that it's being willfully led to the executioner, not by customers and motorists, but by governments and legislators that are pursuing a ruthless green agenda, that only part of which is based on fact, and also which hasn't properly looked at the far-reaching consequences and results of radically changing how we use and enjoy our transportation. Ultimately, this whole thing with Renault and Geely could be a tacit admission that maybe moving solely to EV, or to an EV world if you like, is not really going to work after all. So let me just reiterate though, especially in light of the comments that I've already had on the previous video to this, and I've said this a million times before, but I guess I'm going to have to say it a million times again, I am not anti-EV. I have reviewed tons of them. I think they're really good, and I think that for the right person in the right situation, they're cars that I would heartily recommend. You know, I would say go for it, absolutely. If it works for you, you should definitely try one. There's no reason that you shouldn't. They're great cars, and they're getting better and better all the time. The pace and level of development and technology that's going into those things is simply staggering. So, you know, that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is looking at the car industry, looking at the market, and, you know, trying to understand what's actually going on and where it could lead. So what I'm trying to do is give you guys a heads up as to what's happening and what could be around the corner. That is basically my job, and that's what I'm trying to do as objectively as I possibly can. But anyway, it's a highly contentious issue. EVs do tend to polarize a lot of people, so I look forward to hearing your comments. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you all in the next video.
Brown car guy.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.